Good morning everybody, Shift Your Mindset here with a new episode. And today's episode will be the newest, the latest, obey the governing body statement. First of all, guys, I want to thank all my followers, and I'm extremely proud at the following base of my channel. Why? Because you guys represent the way I am myself. And that's because I did a video last night about an Operation Spotlight, an initiative of other YouTubers. And I have no judgment against it, but it's not my cup of tea. Some people encouraged it to do, other people will do it, and other people are the same like me and just rely on themselves and make their own choices. I also want to personally, Jimmy Bell, thank you for your conversation below the video. I know you're one of the initiators of this campaign. I wish you well. I wish you a good result, that you're happy with what you're doing, that you get fulfillment from what you're doing. And I enjoyed the mutual respect on my video and hearing your side, you respecting my side, I respect your side. And I wish you nothing but the best in achieving your goals you set with the group of people for this initiative. And that's what I like, guys, so much, and that's what I miss also in a certain way in the ex-JW community. That's the importance I want to bring to the people, to have mutual respect, to do your own research, to start your own critical thinking process, and live your own life based on your own choices. I often see still the program is running in people's minds that they are used to the old programming, that they see things, that they do things like they used to do as they were a JW. That we are putting our trust, our faith, or self-love, everything outside of ourselves, that we project things on others, that we seek help from others, that we follow others without thinking why. So, I'm happy with all you guys following me, following this channel. Be honest in your comments. But let's stay respectful like we do to this day. And I want to thank everybody for doing that, for being a great support for the channel. In addition, that I can learn a lot of things from all the comments. So keep commenting under the videos, because that's the way we can help each other in moving forward and not looking back. Not looking back in anger, like the song of Oasis, I believe it is. Don't look back in anger, but just to grow as a person, and that you can take yourself to the better version of yourself. That being said, let's move on to today's topic, obey. We saw the Norway court case that they wanted to shift the responsibility from the governing body, from the elders, all the way to the parents themselves, to the families themselves, that they are responsible for when their child is baptized too early, that they are not giving direction on how to treat disfellowshipped family members or minors, that there are no policies, etc., etc. Today we're gonna cover something new light for me. I will say immediately, Because the new Watchtower study edition claims that Jesus' warning to flee Jerusalem was not sufficient enough. There were many mountains where they can flee to, and many mountains weren't safe. So they needed to obey the needed instruction, additional instructions from those who are taking the lead. And of course, they're pointing to themselves, on to the elders, to the rank and file. I know the story of fleeing Jerusalem. I believe everybody believes and knows that story. I was always thought, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by an army, blah, 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 then you know there's gonna be a time, and that time you have to take it to escape before you can't escape anymore. I always thought, and I think I'm right in this, prove me wrong, it says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded. Immediately I thought, why the additional instructions by those who taking the lead? I thought always that you as a person have the responsibility to keep your eyes open on what's happening around you in the world. It was, I believe, I didn't check it before I started, my bad, but it's when you see Jerusalem surrounded. It's not when your elders see Jerusalem being surrounded, or when the governing body sees that Jerusalem is. So that's red flag number one for me. That I think it's all about the person and the relationship with God, if you have one. God is going to judge you. God, the governing body isn't judging you. The elders can judge you. Only God can judge me, like Tupac already said in his song. So the first paragraph makes the statement, a few days before his death, Jesus gave a detailed prophecy that it had its first fulfillment during the last days of the Jewish system of things. But then we go to new light. It's new light for me, and it's amazing always to me how the governing body adds the secret sauce to always get that attention on them. They're always twisting things and making it more important, in my opinion, than it is. So there were men, but where would they fly then? Where their flight lead them? Jesus had simply said, let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Jesus was very clear. Let those in Judea fleeing to the mountains. Mountains. So there were mountains there. Like here, there are mountains. Flee to the mountains. Not to the sea, not to the river. Go to the mountains. There were mountains around Judea. But in what direction would they flee? So this is already Watchtower trying to maneuver towards the governing body. Consider some of the mountains to which Christians could have fled. Could have, but didn't do. The mountains of Samaria, the mountains in Galilee, Mount Hermon, the mountains of Lebanon, and the mountains across the Jordan. Some of the city in those mountains areas may have appeared to be safe havens. The city of Gamla, for example, was situated on the rough ridge on a high mountain and was extremely difficult to reach. 1 + 1 is 2, very easy. If it's a rough ridge on a high mountain and difficult to reach, every 4-year-old child can think of it that it's not maybe a good part to take shelter because it's so difficult to reach and you may die. What's special about this? Some Jews viewed that city as an ideal place of refuge. However, Gamla became the site of a vicious battle between the Jews and the Romans, and many of its inhabitants died. That was about 3 years later. So, okay. And now the word salad begins. It appears, so it's an assumption for me, that Jehovah guided the Christian by means of those who were taking the lead in the congregation. Historian Eusebius later wrote, blah 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 blah, to migrate from the city before the war and to settle in a certain city of Perea called Pella. Pella seems to have been an ideal choice. It was not far from Jerusalem, making it relatively easy to reach. It was a Gentile city, most part unaffected by the fanatical Jewish freedom fighters and the battles with the Romans. The Christians who fled to the mountains applied Paul's counsel to be obedient to those who are taking the lead in the congregation. Where in the Bible it is stated that those who are taking the lead in the congregation were leading the folks out of Jerusalem towards the mountains. Nowhere. It's again an addition on an addition on an addition on an assumption from the governing body. Jehovah uses those who are taking the lead to provide his people with specific direction. For example, also in COVID-19, those who are taking the lead gave needed direction. No, they didn't give needed direction. They gave the direction from the governing body that was wrong in all places. But they quoting, it appears that Jehovah guided the Christians by means of those who were taking the lead in the congregation. Assumption. Then historian Eusebius later wrote. Okay. Eusebius the historian. If I Google on Eusebius the historian, although Eusebius was not a very reliable historian, it's almost the only record we have. He was a favor of Constantine, so it was an apostate in Jehovah's Witnesses' eyes. He spoke about the Christian churches and stuff like that. So why are you quoting a not reliable historian? An historian like Eusebius, who has enormous historical gaps, because Josephus in the 1st century would be a source for the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70. He writes about wars, about battles, about cities who fall, whatever. But Josephus never mentioned Christians fleeing en masse under a divine direction into the mountains. And that silence is striking for me, because it would have been on the radar of him if thousands of people would have evacuated in an organized fashion to the mountains. Eusebius is from the early 4th century, so 300 years later. And the flight to Pella is only something he talks about. He written that 2 centuries later. He references a divine revelation telling Christians to leave Jerusalem, to fly to Pella. But he doesn't cite any eyewitnesses or another earlier source. And that's typical for me. So why would you quote as Watchtower an unreliable source? He doesn't have any eyewitnesses or previous sources who lived during that time. Modern scholars, they challenge a lot of his work and his reliability on this matter. And given that Josephus is silent about this, we don't know if it even happened. And he does the same thing in his articles, what the Watchtower does. The Watchtower said, it appears, you read in that paragraph. And he also have, it appears. Some have said, may have happened. So for me that is weaseling words. That is word salad 100%. And it is speculative. All those claims, if it's factual or divinely led, you avoid concrete evidence. And that makes it hard for me, as a critical thinker, to believe this. And I hope a Jehovah's Witness, if he studies this article next year, he's also gonna do what I'm doing now. Who is Eusebius? Is he trustworthy? Google it. What is his work? What are the words he is using? All stuff like that. And they are master manipulators in a sense that they are linking history with now. And I think you can't link those things that easily with each other. Because it's a manipulation tactic many people use. They link things on the now because they have an old thing that happened and they are drawing a parallel towards obedience to elders. No one is talking in the scriptures about elders taking the lead, gathering all the people to move out, making rows of 4 people in a row, what you can take with you to the mountains, how many donkeys you need for the road, how many miles you have to walk, how many days they were walking, how many people fled to the mountains. There was no organization, nothing of this. And they always are linking then and now to each other, and they twist it like that the Christians in that time followed divinely appointed leaders to safety. And that's what they're trying to do now. We have the best interest for you and we want you to lead to safety. And they do it in this day to not fleeing to the mountains, but to say, yeah, you have to go to your basement and you have to lock that door and you have to have a secret door knock. And so you know there's another JW who wants to come in and stuff like that. But they're always linking all things to obedience to a governing body at this time. And we saw that pandemic, we saw it at the Great Tribulation, how they're talking about that. It's always that there's no solid evidence that a hierarchical Christian leadership evacuated or coordinated the evacuation. If some people left, it could have been because they saw the political climate getting worse. Not because of a miraculous heads up. And that's what I believe in, and that's what I'm doing. I'm not looking at divine intervention and leaders here in the area who talk about things. No, I am observing the political climate. I'm not interested in it, but I observe it in a certain degree, certain way. I see things getting worse for me. Electricity prices going up. They try to do this to disconnect you when they can. They try this. They are making it more complicated for you guys, for me. And that's why I keep my eyes open and I think, now Sven, it's time to act. I'm going off the grid. I don't have an obligation to other people. I don't have to pay money to the government for this, for that. They can make the prices go up, but I'm safe. I have my veggie garden. I have my animals. I have my chicken with their eggs. I have my solar and I have plenty of water. So whatever happens around me, I won't let it affect me. So that's observing me. And I'm not pressuring my neighbors. I'm not gonna warn my neighbors. I'm not gonna rally the troops here in the community and say, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that, follow me, we'll go to the mountains. No, everyone has to make their own decisions on how it goes. And that's what's going on in Jerusalem at that time, I think. No governing body needed, no elders needed, and I think we proved it already that there was no divine intervention and there was no governing body and elders there taking the lead. But Watchtower, again, master of the puppets, they always want to make it about them and keeping them their importance. Because if you keep yourself important and people believe you, you keep your followers. When you keep your followers, you keep your money. When you keep your money, you are happy. The rest will suffer. And why it matters, this story, it's about the Watchtower teachings to trust organizational direction to stay safe. That's what the government tries to do. You have to follow and trust us as a government, as a governing body, as a religion, to stay safe. But I feel safer when I keep myself safe without following them. But this whole historical record is a murky one for me, and the only detailed historian I know, Josephus, zero mention about this divine exodus. And Eusebius, centuries late, unreliable historian if I Google it. He's short on details. He is heavily debated by other scholars. So if a story like this, if you are JW, and if a story like this is used in the Watchtower to encourage obedience on this shaky ground, then you have every right to be skeptical. And if you are JW, you are studying this and you're skeptical, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Just start your critical thinking and don't think anything you learn for granted and as if it's true. You have to define your own truth. So, I know faith is personal and meaningful, but it isn't based on an organization that uses questionable history. So, this article insists and encourages people to return and to stay in a high controlled group. All based on questionable claims and highly speculative. And I want to say one thing to all those guys who are studying this and believing this and just eating it up like candy. Trust your instinct and start your critical thinking. If you do that, you're already halfway there. Good luck, people. Thank you for watching. Share this video, like this video, and let me know what you think about this. It was new light for me. I only know as a kid that people were fleeing out of Jerusalem towards the mountain. It was new light for me that there is some kind of divine intervention. It was, because the armies retreated at a certain point, but I didn't know that it was about the governing body and that we have to obey, because the leaders of the whole thing were the ones who get additional instructions where to flee to. I never have learned that before in all my years as a GW, that it was not good to go to the mountains, but it has to be a specific spot on the mountains. I never knew that, and I never knew that they made it also clear that those additional instructions came from those who were taking the lead at that time. And in this time, the governing body and the elders. So, new light for me. I don't know if I learned anything today from that, but we'll see. Thank you for watching. See each other on the next episode.